Let's talk vomit. And by that, I mean first drafts.
Your first drafts are always terrible.
Was there a first draft for this?
It was just a first draft.
Well, sort of. I mean, I wrote some notes. Would that be considered a draft? If this is a draft, then I'm sort of going against something Neil Gaiman said, which was...
Nobody is ever meant to read your first draft.
I'm opening the kimono. Do people still say that?
The kimono is open.
Let's take that offline. Circle back later. Put that in the parking lot. Let's pop the hood on this.
Peel the onion.
Now, historically, when it comes to writing first drafts and writing my book,
Bring me a first draft tomorrow morning.
it's a case of hashtag TLDW. Too long, didn't write. When you look at it that way, I could be classed as a draft dodger. Not that kind. I mean the kind of draft dodger that, while understanding the complexities of the case at hand and the matter by which one has to execute the case at hand, one deftly sidesteps all actions that could perhaps lead to the completion of that mission, which is to complete a first draft and therefore move to the next step of perhaps finishing a novel.
Procrastinating. Procrastinating.
Without the first draft, there can be no second. That's 3. Second.
The second draft is where I try and make it look like I knew what I was doing all along.
Maybe there are 3. And as I say in the thing that I wrote this week, oh shit, I didn't even introduce. This is why you write drafts, people, so that you don't skip important things like actually introducing what the topic. Well, no, you've introduced the topic, you just haven't introduced the thing that you wrote about the topic. Let's do that now. Today we're going to talk about a little thing that I wrote called And the Draft Horse You Rode In On. And we're back. What was I saying? First drafts are important.
First draft, all thoughts are welcome.
And if you don't take the shot, you miss 100% of the time. Is that the quote? I don't think that's the quote. Let's look that up. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Mr. Wayne Gretzky.
Oh, Gretzky is denied.
Janeen, are you using a sports quote? Ice hockey? That's just not cricket. It's a little tip of the hat to my Antipodean relatives. Play cricket. Now, I wrote the post about first drafts because I'm trying to hype myself up.
I'm being your hype man.
To write the messiest, rawest, ugliest first draft known to man in the history of first drafts. So rough.
And here's my rambling, repetitive first draft.
Admittedly, there's no way to measure it against other rough and raw first drafts because, like Neil Gaiman said, no one's supposed to see your first draft.
Because it's a first draft.
What else you got to say, Neil?
My usual notebook right now is a Leuchtturm because I really like the way you can paginate stuff in them and the thickness of the paper. And they're just like sort of moleskins, but the Porsche of moleskin.
Now, the following quote I've also heard Neil Gaiman say, but I believe it is most often attributed to his friend Terry Pratchett. R.I.P. Terry Pratchett. You're one of the only authors I have an autograph of.
Your first draft is you telling the story to yourself.
Now, as I was saying, draft dodger, here's why. I write, and then I get to a certain point where I start thinking about everything I've messed up so far, or things that I could make better, and instead of continuing to get the whole story out, I start going back, and I start fixing things. And then I go back again, and I fix that. By which point, I get so sick of it that I'm like, this is dumb.
This sucks.
I get bored of it, and that draft becomes so flimsy and light and insubstantial that an actual draft will come in through the window and blow it away out of my life, never to be seen again. To write the first draft, you have to close the window.
Summer breeze.
Ooh, look what the draft just blew in. It's corny.
Dad joke alert.
The post was actually based on a note that I wrote down on this post-it probably 4 or 5 years ago. The rawness of the first draft is indicative of its true power.
Wow.
It goes back to this idea of like it needs to be raw.
Raw, naked power.
The more rawness there is to it, the uglier it is, the greater the potential it has for being something extraordinary. But you will never know if you don't get all the parts and pieces down, if you don't just let it flow out of you, just vomit. Just get it out. Out, damn plot. My work here is done. That's a second draft of Billy Shakespeare there.
Oh, my God.
Little rewrite. Anyway, it's a note I jotted down to my future self, and guess what?
Future.
Future self has arrived.
See your future. Be your future.
It's time for me to buckle down and find this raw first draft, this powerful thing that I know is somewhere within me.
A fantastic first draft.
I have a couple of ideas that I need to vet before I start, but part of the process was writing and the draft horse you rode in on. It got me, I wouldn't say this was part of the prep, but writing that little pep talk to myself about writing the first draft, it got me reviewing some things I'd already seen, like I have this book, Writing Down the Bones. I read that probably 20 years ago. Of course, the classic Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird. It's very good. I'm just looking for some spiritual guide rails that'll help me through the next, I should give myself a time limit.
Clock starts now.
Let's say 3 to 6 months to write that first draft. It's all about getting it out of my head and onto the page. Whether that's a physical page or in the brain of my computer here. Actually, I think I might do the first draft in a notebook because there's too much temptation with the delete key.
Delete, delete.
Maybe I should get a typewriter. Cormac McCarthy used a typewriter. I know the model and everything. Wait, a sentence like that, maybe I should get a typewriter. Classic draft dodger behaviour for avoiding doing your first draft. Oh, I can't start till I get that typewriter. This chair sucks. Cut that shit out. Get to work. Just right. It's easy. Looks like this. Start here, finish here. How you get from there to there. That's the beauty of the draft. What's going to happen? Boop. Finish the first draft. Everything in between. That's the exciting part. Fun. Don't overthink it. Just get it done. Right. Right like the wind.
She's like the wind.
First draft.
Here's a quote from Ray Bradbury. The faster you blurt, the more swiftly you write, the more honest you are. In hesitation is thought. In delay comes the effort for a style. Instead of leaping upon truth, which is the only style worth dead-falling and tiger-trapping. Fancy words. Typical writer. He just means write as fast as you can so you can't think about it.
Think.
Thinking encourages judgment, and judgment is what pumps the brakes on your draft.
It's just a first draft.
So let's talk about the giant elephant of a horse in the room. It's about the method. It's about the creature that you have to channel in order to get the first draft out. I chose the draft horse because it conveniently had the word draft in it, though as an Australian I would spell it D-R-A-U-G-H-T, but I'm also an American, so... Draft dodger no longer. I am a draft horse.
In the fields, they were worth their weight in gold.
No, I will not be neighing on cue. Kind of cheap thrill are you looking for? Draft horses are strong.
Strong legs, good shoulders, a fine head.
Powerful. They pull the plough. They create those furrows that reveal the earthworms, the rich soil, expose it to the sky. Row after row until the entire field of your imagination is ploughed. Only when the draft horse is done, when the field is ploughed, can you go back and inspect everything that's been revealed by your plough that was pulled by the draft horse, which is you.
These noble steeds have worked hard for man.
You pull and pull and pull.
Empower your horse.
Put your blinkers on and pull the plough. Do not stop. Horses. Pull. There's a line in the piece that I wrote which I quoted from a guide to how to plough I was reading. Because, research, it's what's for dinner. We'll circle back to that later.
Research.
It's about how to set the guide for your rows. The quote goes like this. Never use a cow in your neighbour's field as a marker reference. The danger of writing first drafts is comparing yourself to others. Your competition, like a cow in another field, has a tendency to move. Do not bother yourself with what's happening in other fields.
Ignore them.
Blinkers on, pull the plough. Write the first draft. Use something solid in your own field as a guide, like, the words, the end.
Done. It's done.
Then go back. Get it all down. Let it pour out of you and onto the page. Write an incredibly shitty, self-indulgent, whining, mewling first draft, then take out as many of the excesses as you can. The excess part, that's after you've done the first draft. Only you can write your first draft. Hemingway said all first drafts are shit.
It's a first draft, remember, it's probably a mess.
It will be what it will be, but only if you write it. Here's a tangent that is at least related, and it's to do with research and whether or not that's part of the drafting process. It's kind of like a pre-drafting process. Umberto Eco, author of a very large book that I have never finished.
You know, the big book.
He talks about his process and how he spends years researching before he writes a single word. I'm not 100% sure that that should be part of everyone's process, but it's part of his process. And no two authors. No one really has the same approach. For example, John Irving, Cider House Rules, World According to Garp, Hotel New Hampshire. He begins by writing the last line first. His good friend, Stephen King, says, "Fuck that." I'm paraphrasing.
Everybody works a different way, and God bless John, and he's done some wonderful work in his lifetime, and he'll probably do some more, but I could never write a book that way.
The point is, pull the plow. You must make progress in whatever way works for you.
We got plowing to do.
In some cases, pulling the plow may unearth a library in your neighbourhood that you have to go to and research something. For Umberto Eco, he says the purpose of his research is to create a world fully fleshed out that his characters can inhabit, can live in. Those characters that he creates can move effortlessly through this world because he's researched it so thoroughly it feels real.
I have to know the number of steps in a staircase in order to make my character to climb up.
Oh. He also says,
I always repeat, it is not the author who writes the novel. The author posits some starting points. Then the novel writes himself by itself.
It writes itself? That's awesome. This is going to be easy. Now I'm excited. It's going to write itself. Probably don't even have to be there. I can go ride my bike. Now that I have found out that he did 8 years of research before he wrote a single word of Foucault's Pendulum, I don't feel so bad about taking 25 years to not finish that book.
It's a big book.
You know, there's so much I could put in this episode and really stuff it to the gills with the talking heads of authors telling you how to write the first draft or telling you that it's really hard to write a first draft.
But I won't.
Oh, it's a helpful draft, isn't it? This post-it is another one that I had stuck to my monitor in my office. And it says, get it to the next place. That's really your only job. Every day, get it to the next place. Give yourself a goal, certain number of pages you're going to write. Do something every day. Something that moves it forward, that ploughs another furrow into the first draft field.
Hand-plowed field.
Approach each day with that as your goal. Get it to the next place. Pull the plow. Unearth those fat and juicy character worms. Antagonists, protagonists, plot points. Get it all exposed. You want to know one of the alternate titles I had for... And the draft horse you rode in on? Brace yourself. If wishes were draft horses, this book would be published by now. Like, subscribe, bell for notifications. See you in the field.